off in honour of Heineken and Continental, UEFA Champions League sponsors, in salute of European football's governing body and its FIFA boycott. Now, we just need the tourists to boycott touting sites and Manchester United to boycott dubious practices. Fergus is with us, bringing the average age down a bit. I'm talking about me, obviously, not Carly, who is fresh from the big showdown with the club, but can't really talk about it until the minutes are made public. What can you talk about, though? What can you tell us?
I can talk about, the general principles that we've put to the club. I can talk about the general sort of temperature within the room, which was spicy and hot, as you can probably imagine. So the meeting was in two parts. The first part was with just the standard club officials, which started off as, usually the meetings have like a bit of a structure. All structure went out the window today, and the whole ticketing drama was obviously top of the agenda, obviously for legal reasons, etc., because we can't say anything until the club makes the everything official and public as per the terms of reference. I can say that, it was a very heated discussion. The club were left how can I say this? The club were left very aware of the strength of feeling in the room and the strength of feeling amongst fans. They already knew that. It felt like we were going in to a situation where they already knew everything that we thought. They knew all the arguments. We'd been in constant contact with the club over the last 2 weeks. They know the arguments that we've been making to them. All of the arguments are around, the idea that this exercise is seems to be guilt before innocence. It's finding fans guilty before they've been, it's the wrong way round. It's been about the principles that we went in on were very much about fans feeling that they are being accused of guilty before being innocent, that the approach has been wrong the whole way round. It should be about, if they want to eliminate touting, they've gone about it potentially the wrong way, because what they've caught isn't necessarily just touts. It's fans engaged in all sorts of, not necessarily malicious behaviours. Sharing login details, paying for other people's tickets on their own credit cards, etc. Things that might not be exactly within the terms and conditions, but it's not against the spirit of the terms and conditions. It's not for financial gain. It's uncovered a lot of behaviour that the club clearly had no idea about the way that people access each other's accounts and share details and apply for things together. And so the aim should have been, we've said all along, reforming behaviour rather than punishing it. You're always going to have a small minority at the top of, they've created this pyramid seemingly of people that share their account with 6 other people, 7 other people, 8 other people. They've put this arbitrary line at 6 people and said anything 7 or above needs investigation. There are clearly people right at the top of that who are, a handful of people that are sharing them with potentially hundreds of different accounts. But what they've done is they've caught up the people at the bottom end who share with, 7 or 8 different other accounts who aren't doing anything against the rules, and asking them to account for their behaviours, putting lots of pressure on fans, building anxiety amongst the fan base. And the cost of that exercise with regard to a fan engagement perspective, with regards to the relationship between fans and club, we don't believe that by eliminating a small number of touts at the top, who will probably just find other ways to access tickets and sell them anyway, the cost of breaking down those relationships is not possibly worth the benefit of, banning a few touts. We've been pushing to get better evidence for fans. People who have appealed haven't been given the reasons why they've been suspended. They haven't been given all of the evidence that they're going to rely on at the appeals panel, which accounts that they've, alleged to have accessed. So we've been pushing for fans to have more oversight of the charges against them. If they're going to suspend people's season tickets, that they require actual proper evidence of financial gain and not just doing it on a hunch. That they need to distinguish professional touts from genuine supporters, that cancellation of a season ticket should be for only, really severely exceptional cases where there's very clear evidence of touting, and anything below that threshold should just be a warning. We've seen that you're doing this that and the other with your account, which goes against the terms and conditions. You need to stop that. If it continues, we may need to take further action. If they wanted to change behaviour, that is all it would take at this point. But they've been pushing and catching up more and more people within this unjust system. So we've been pushing for, trying to get that threshold a bit higher, trying to take out some of the genuine fans from the process, trying to give fans better evidence so that they can have more successful appeals against the suspensions, telling them that they need to consult with their fan bodies before they undertake these massive exercises that catch up loads of innocent supporters. And so it remains to be seen publicly what the outcome of those discussions are. But I don't think that there is anything more at this point that fans and fan groups could have done to make fans' position any more clear than it already is. The club are fully aware of the strength of feeling on the issue. They're fully aware of the proposed solutions that we've put to them, and the ball is very much in their court now with regard to what action they take next, and what they release publicly about how the process will continue.
All right, they did apologise in a way, saying, quote, some innocent fans may have been caught up. They haven't admitted any wrongdoing though, have they? And it, they're still asking people to comply with what's clearly an undue process. I mean, they're saying as well the vast majority of accounts under suspicion were correctly flagged. And yet it's still really straightforward if you want to buy tickets to get hold of them. So StubHub Ireland, that I checked recently, earlier today, selling away tickets for the away end at Hull, first game of the season, for between €1,300 and €2,400. So
the interesting thing about the StubHub thing is that those tickets, the way that people do it on StubHub is, you'll notice that it's StubHub Ireland, not UK. Yeah. On StubHub Ireland, you don't actually have to have evidence that the ticket exists. So what people do, and I don't know why I'm sharing the methodologies here, but people will put speculative listings on StubHub Ireland for like €1,600, knowing that if someone then gives them the 16, bites and says, right, I'm going to pay €1,600, they can then source a cheaper ticket on one of the UK sites, hedge their bets. If they can't find a cheaper ticket, the transaction just get cancelled and they don't lose anything. So it's a bit of a gamble from touts on StubHub Ireland. So those tickets don't necessarily exist. That is a speculative listing by touts who think that they might be able to get that amount of money and then provide an alternative ticket. But those alternative tickets are, probably coming through some of the routes that we suspect that tickets might be coming from, naming no names, potentially particular non-supporter driven elements of the allocations.
Interesting.
But
yes.
that bit's not as straightforward as it seems, and the number of tickets that are available on StubHub Ireland are not necessarily reflective of the number of tickets that are available. Don't buy your tickets from StubHub Ireland.
Yeah, well, especially when there's so many tremendous black market sources on Facebook. Why you can't talk specifics about the actual words in the meeting then? What do you think might be the end of this matter, or will it be resolved? And do you think at least that some position has changed in the last week or so?
There's definitely been a softening from the club. The initial comms that went out, that initial email that went out to people, the tone of it was horrendous. Like, it was accusatory. Again, it was guilty until proven innocent. It was completely the wrong way round. It was talking to fans in a way that no fans, businesses, any business would never talk to their customers in the way that, fans were spoken to in that email. It was appalling. I think the club have recognised that communication fell far short of the standard that United fans deserve. And then the second email that went out was seemingly redrafted and a lot softer in tone. So I think they've definitely realised that they made a huge mistake there. But it just feels like there's been a real, the tone of things has softened. I think they've realised that they should have presented things in a different way. But I'm not sure that they, from everything previously until this point today, that they were convinced that the process and the exercise itself was inappropriate. So what we've been pushing for them to do is recognise that just the whole process of it has been appalling. what's basically a fishing expedition trying to get fans to share details of who they're connected to, who accesses their accounts, accounting for what is pretty normal fan behaviours. The whole process has been suspect, but they've been very slow to recognise that they've, it's a very politician type response of, the process itself, our decision was sound, but the way we communicated it wasn't. So it remains to be seen, I think, publicly what the outcome of that is going to be, whether they're going to genuinely listen and correct the process and the outcomes that fans will receive from that process, or whether they'll continue to view it as, a legitimate process that was just communicated the wrong way.
Wow, Man United being tone deaf, who'd have thought? They're relying, Fergus, I guess, on the majority of people saying, well, it didn't affect me, I'll come regardless, or enough people leaving that they'll be able to flog a ticket on with a burger at Victoria Warehouse. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete nightmare at the moment. From the point of view of someone who hasn't been a season ticket holder for a number of years now, I was in my much younger youth, but it's been a nightmare getting tickets anyway. You just end up spending way over the odds for tickets that aren't anywhere near good enough. And I know that's maybe not particularly relevant to this discussion, but it does feel more and more as though the club is kind of trying to, I think you guys have mentioned it on the show before, having edited it, that more and more of the people who are trying to go locally are being priced out of that.
Yeah, it's a big issue. Go on.
I was going to say the point was made very firmly to them today. Fans are being hounded over, the slightest suggestion that they might possibly be forward, selling tickets or passing on tickets outside of approved processes, whether, money exchanges hands or not. But at the same time, we've got a situation now in the stadium where you can have 3 fans sat next to each other in East Tier 2, let's say. One of them is a member who's paid £67 for an Ipswich ticket. One of them is in the adjacent seat, has gone through hospitality through the club and paid £400 for the same seat. The only difference is they've had burger and chips at Victoria Warehouse thrown in. So there's a discrepancy of £300 between face value and the cost of burger and chips at an unnamed off-site hospitality venue, and the actual amount that they've paid. So if that £300 is not part of, someone profiting from a face value ticket, and gaining financially from it, the club don't like the accusation that the club are the biggest touts. But how do you account for that discrepancy? Then next to those fans, you might have someone who has bought a travel package through the club's official travel partner, who I won't name, but you can find them on the website. I emailed them last week about City tickets to find out, just out of interest, if they were providing City tickets directly to fans. They are, for about £260. So a face value, what would usually be a face value City ticket, which for a member costs £87, is £286 with them. That £199 discrepancy gets you an Uber voucher. And then, if they add in an Uber voucher, it isn't a seat anymore, it's a travel package. So they can put an extra £199 on top of it. But that is absolutely fine. That is the club's official travel partner, and that is absolutely fine and dandy. Yet, at the slightest hint that a fan might be going outside of the approved situation for not for forwarding tickets, for accessing accounts and account activity, you're getting hauled up and being made to account for every credit card transaction you've had, every person that you're linked to, every ticket that you've forwarded on, the ins and outs of a cat's arse. And, that's completely justified. So
disgusting image. It's still a big article on our Substack. Find it if you want to search for that. Give us a follow anyway. We do an article a week, all free for now, just like this is. If you want to help or contribute, creamofmanchester1878@gmail.com. Same address if you'd like to sponsor us. This episode is sponsored by Stupid Greedy Bastards. It's pretty morally bankrupt of us just to accept that money, but we fancied a curry, and this bald Swiss bloke said we could join his World Cup and play against Tonga, and he'll give us 20 million quid just for voting for him. Apropos of absolutely nothing, Fergus, what do we think of the UEFA boycott?
I mean, I think it's their only choice, isn't it? That's all they can do. UEFA have kind of set themselves up, especially since the Super League, as the kind of moral arbiters of football, that somehow their way of organising football is better than everyone else's. And I don't necessarily disagree with them in this particular aspect. But yeah, I don't think when you've kind of presented yourself, even though you've kind of changed the Champions League in order to make it weighted easier towards the bigger clubs, etc., you can't do anything else. You have to present yourself as the kind of, yeah, as I say, the moral arbiters of football.
What would a split mean for you, Carly? Would you care? Do you follow international football? Wales could qualify for something, or would it make it harder? I can't work that out.
Got no idea. I'd be quite gutted, actually, because I was actually planning on going to the next World Cup. So it feels like everything that I love, like, and now have to fucking boycott or gets taken away.
Where is it? Is it another mad country? Oh, no, it's in North Africa and...
It's Spain, Portugal, and Morocco.
Yeah.
I mean, the moral arbiter of football that employed David Gill on their governing body for 11 years. It feels that I can't believe that there would be any teeth in, a boycott of European clubs from the World Cup. I think sometimes we see this sort of grandstanding from governing bodies who seem to want to shift blame elsewhere for the ills of football without, looking at which noses might be in their own trough. But it feels very pot-kettled, doesn't it? And I can't see that a boycott is actually going to have much standing or carry through with much legs, to be honest.
Really? I mean, I've heard it described as like a PDC, BDO moment,
I'm just very glad that Juan Mata has not got involved in this.
Yes. But he could be football saviour. What if everyone's like, if the South Americans joined in with Europe? Surely you can't have a World Cup without Europe and South America. It'd be a mad that would be like turbo PDC, wouldn't it? So if that was to happen and finally there was enough is enough attitude and Juan could come in with his halo and say, look, I won't bribe you. I won't be bought and things like that. And then would the Euros just be if there's no World Cup full stop, or there's just this thing between South America and Europe, would that mean there'd still be a tournament every 4 years? I suppose it would, wouldn't it? So no more rest, which the players have been collectively arguing for. I don't know. Maybe Bruno Fernandes will I don't know. He might get a week off at some point if the winter break comes in.
We have in the Euros, the UEFA's, flagship tournament of the Euros. Is that not happening in famed, uncorrupt, unfettered by sports washing and other such, dodgy dealings as the Etihad in its next incarnation? So,
Yeah, I mean, you sounded a bit conspiracy theorist now. David Gill's absolutely clean. There's no sports washing in English football and there's nothing to see. It's time to move on to the final subject, which is Danny Welbeck, and would you like to see him back? I'll start with you. I could actually, Ferguson, are you old enough to remember him to see him play for United?
He scored in the first ever game that I went to at Old Trafford.
Against Spurs?
Scored that screamer against Stoke.
Oh, it was a belter, yeah. Yeah, was it 5-0 that game?
5-0. Yeah. It was the fifth of the five.
2008 or something? 2007?
2008.
Yeah.
2008. Unbelievable. But I have seen a lot of people getting very, very nostalgic about Danny Welbeck. And I mean, I'm maybe not quite old enough to remember how inconsistent he was towards the time he ended up at Arsenal. But it certainly didn't feel like he was quite as good as people are remembering him as.
Well, what I would say is, I remember reading that Ferguson thought Van Gaal was mad to get rid of him. Ferguson obviously rated him. I don't know what's going on. Is that your picture of I thought Carly had fallen over with a stroke or something. Wenger obviously rated him. Hodgson rated him. So there's a lot of that in his favour. But surely, Carly, he couldn't be brought in. He would never have been brought in to teach Benjamin Šeško how to finish.
I think he was really unlucky in the last few seasons in that there was an expectation on him to reach the levels of Rooney and Van Persie. And I don't think anyone was under, least of all Danny Welbeck, that, he was not at that standard. But when you consider what came after him, the Weghorsts, the Hoylands, all of the other sort of absolute dross, Memphis Depay, Falcao, like Cavani, I'm not saying that they were dross, but if you compare what we've had since to what we could have had we kept Wells. And I think it shows that, similarly to I would make a very similar argument with McTominay. we probably lost more than we gained with the replacements. I would have kept him at the time, but I definitely would have had him back. Probably not until fairly recently, maybe sort of like from about 2022 onwards, but I absolutely would have welcomed him back with open arms over the last sort of 4 years or so to come back and shake things up a bit. And, you know, there's a lot of things that he had his weaknesses, but you could never doubt his work rate, his passion for it all. He's a very intelligent guy and a very intelligent player. And I think he really, really could have done a job for us over the last 4 years compared to what we've had instead.
And he was a Red from a very young age. And what else? I think you've said it all, haven't you? Or whatever you're going to say, I've forgotten. He was.
As much as I have grown to like him, would you have preferred Danny Welbeck to come back or to have signed Xerxes?
Yeah, God, I think I'd have.
Xerxes just scored an unbelievable goal against Rosenborg.
Yeah,
Surely
Yeah, no, I was going to say that he seems, by all accounts, to be a really good lad. And the thing is that United have had to work to get good dressing room influence in the last couple of years rather than bad dressing room influence. And anyway, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But am I misremembering things finally? Weren't you very much part of the 20-odd minute Radamel Falcao at Yeovil away, Carly? Or am I misremembering that? I did have a few drinks on the way down and it's a very long journey.
I most definitely was. Might have also been involved in a slightly less long Angel Di Maria chant at that game as well, but my memory is very hazy. Can I just say, talking of very long trips to away games in such gorgeous parts of the country as Yeovil, our mode of transport on that day was the famed bucket bus, the Mostonian, which has today announced that it will no longer be doing away trips as of next season. Many of us are absolutely gutted to hear the news that they're not going to be continuing. I know that it's been very difficult over the last few years for them with, just the price of petrol and the increased costs of running a bus service. But there have been some really, really incredible times on the Mostonian over the last few years. And I would just like to pay tribute to both Daves, Pie and Painter, for all their hard work and dedication over the last few seasons to bring inebriated Reds to remote rural pubs at the side of lay-bys on Sunday afternoons post-game, and their services to making barmaids very unhappy across the nation.
Yes, well said. The end of the Mostonian and the Betty bus a few years earlier as well. What the diminishing resources for very inebriated Reds. We did a podcast. Well done, everyone. Don't be surprised if this time next week Chelsea have tempted James Milner out of retirement. Hopefully by then, some unequivocal good news on season tickets and maybe even some succor for the transfer weirdos, though in fairness, United definitely do still need a couple of players. A bloke we've never heard of is going to manage Newcastle, and John Stones has signed for Inter. Mind the trams when they come back on Sunday. Bye-bye.